Today, we are going to study about the next topic, Vida. You can see on the screens. What is it that we are going to study today? Which system?
Lymphatic system.
Yes, lymphatic system. Have you done this a bit earlier? Any idea a little bit about lymphatic system? Yes,
Ma'am,
no.
lymphatic system works like the WBCs of our body. It helps us to fight bacteria and makes antibodies.
Okay. Others? Anything else about lymphatic system? Let me see who all have joined. Ananya, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Ananya, very good. Give attendance very quickly. Anshika.
Yes,
Anshika
ma'am.
can have it there. Okay. Then Aradhe.
Yes, ma'am.
Drish, and then we have Drishti,
Present, ma'am.
Sanvi,
Present, ma'am.
Shrishti.
Present, ma'am.
Yes, bache. Vedahi,
Present, ma'am.
Mansi is there. Mansi? There she's waiting room. Fine. And Prabhav is there. Soni, Uditi, they are in the waiting. Let us admit all. Yes, bache. We're going to study about the lymphatic system. There are three main components of the lymphatic system. Okay, one by one, we are going to study about all of them. How many main components of the lymphatic system?
Three main components.
Three main. First is lymph, second is lymph vessels, and the third is lymph nodes. So what are the three components of lymphatic system? Lymph, lymph vessels, and lymph nodes. Beta G, speak out. What are the three components of lymphatic system?
Lymph vessels, and lymph nodes.
Lymph vessels and lymph nodes.
The name is quite confusing because all of them are lymph, lymph, lymph. So we need to understand what are lymph vessels, what are lymph nodes, and what is lymph. The fluid which is circulating, the liquid or the fluid which is going to flow or circulate, that is what we call as lymph. The vessels through which this fluid or lymph will move or circulate are known as lymph vessels. So these two parts of lymphatic system are clear. The fluid which is going to flow or circulate is what we call as lymph. And the vessels through which, like blood flows through blood vessels. Similarly, the other liquid which circulates in the human body is lymph. So lymph also needs some vessels through which it is going to circulate. Those vessels are what we call as lymph vessels. Are we clear with the lymph and lymph vessels?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, there are two types of lymph vessels. One are lymph capillaries. Capillaries which are known as lymphatic capillaries. There are two types of lymph vessels. That means the lymph is going to flow through two types of vessels. One are those small capillaries. Those capillaries are called lymphatic capillaries. And then many lymphatic capillaries will join to form big ducts, which are known as lymphatic ducts. So small capillaries, they will join, they will form bigger vessels, which are known as lymphatic ducts. So lymph is the fluid which is going to circulate. The vessels through which your lymph is going to circulate are known as lymph vessels. How many kinds of lymph vessels are there?
Two.
Two types.
Yes, two types. Capillaries in which lymph flows. What are these capillaries called?
Lymphatic capillaries.
What are lymphatic capillaries or blood capillaries? Any capillaries. They are very, very small. So many capillaries will join and form a bigger vessel. What is a bigger vessel known as?
Lymphatic duct.
Abhi will be studying how many lymphatic ducts are there. I'll be telling you about them. But as of now, we did what is lymph? We did lymph vessels. There are two types of lymph vessels. I said there are three main components of lymphatic system. First is lymph, second is lymph vessels, And the third are the lymph nodes. What are lymph nodes? The glands which are present on the path of the flow of the lymph. But a lymph is flowing in which vessels?
Lymphatic
Lymph
vessels.
vessels.
They could be capillaries or they could be ducts. So on the way, on the path, when lymph is flowing in these vessels, there are certain glands which are located. These glands are what we call as the lymph nodes. So before I go to the details about all these three very quickly, what are the three main components of lymphatic system?
Lymph, lymph vessels, and
Lymph
lymph
nodes.
nodes.
The fluid which is going to circulate in the body is what we call as,
Lymph.
Lymph.
and the vessels through which this lymph will circulate or move in the body, what are they known as?
Lymph
Lymph
vessels.
vessels.
How many kinds of lymph vessels are there?
Two.
Two types.
The small thin capillaries through which lymph flows. What are these capillaries called?
Lymphatic capillaries.
Lymphatic capillaries.
And then these lymphatic capillaries will join to form bigger ducts, which are known as.
Lymphatic ducts.
Lymphatic duct.
So when lymph is flowing in the lymph vessels, whether it is capillaries or ducts, we are talking about the lymph is flowing in the vessels. On the path, some glands are present. What are we going to call them as? What nodes?
Lymph nodes.
Nodes.
Lymph nodes.
Let us go and study a little more about the first part, that is your lymph. Does anybody know what is lymph actually made up of? Hmm? Never mind. Chalo, we'll study.
What?
Yes, beta, lymph बनता कैसे है? First, let's find out कि कैसे बनता है lymph. Beta, lymph is simply formed by the filtration of blood. Just remember one sentence and the concept will be entirely clear to you. When your blood gets filtered, what is formed is lymph. What happens is, we know arteries. Arteries divide to form arterioles and then capillary wall and then the capillaries. The capillary walls, they are very, very thin. The walls of the capillary, how are they? They are very thin. So pressure is more. Why the pressure is more? Filtration of blood is going to take place because the walls of the capillaries are very thin. So what will take place is filtration of blood. The walls of the capillaries are so thin that they are made up of only a single layer of squamous epithelium. The walls of the capillaries, are they thin or they are thick?
Thin.
Very
Thin.
thin.
They don't have multi layers. It's a single layer, and that too the layer is very thin. And that single layer is made up of squamous epithelium cells. So blood will enter through the arteriole. First, the blood is going to enter through arteriole. Remember, beta, what passage I told you? It will first enter the arterioles. From arterioles, it will go into capillaries. Beta, see the division. First, it enters the arteries. Arteries divide to form arterioles, and from arterioles, the blood is going into capillaries. So when we trace the path of blood, beta, first it is going in arterioles or capillaries? Where?
Arteries.
Arterioles.
In arterioles, the lumen is more. What do you mean by lumen?
Matrix.
The space between the
What is
walls.
lumen? Yes, the empty space you can say, or the space is more. So in arteriole, the space is more. And now the blood from the arteriole is now reaching the capillaries, and capillaries are narrow. So the lumen in narrow capillaries will be more or less?
Less.
Less.
It would be less. That means your blood is flowing from wider to narrow or narrow to wider?
Wider to narrow.
Wider to narrow, because it is coming from arteriole to capillaries. In arterioles, the lumen is more, the space is more for the blood to travel. But when the blood passes from the arterioles to the capillaries, the lumen is less beta. So the blood is shifting from a region which is wider to a region which is narrow. So what will happen to the blood pressure? Will it increase or will it decrease?
Increase.
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 Obviously, it's going to increase. The space is less. And there was a good amount of blood which has come because earlier we had the space which was large. Listen again. Blood has entered into from the arteries, it has gone to arterioles. From arterioles, it is going into capillaries. But there is one problem over here. The arterioles had a wider lumen, so blood was flowing comfortably there. But when from arteriole it passes to capillaries, the lumen of the capillaries is comparatively smaller. So your blood is moving from a wider space to a narrower space. To the blood, the pressure is going to increase. See, I've tried to explain it to you. This is your artery. Can you see this part, the beginning part? What is this? This is artery. Then this artery is dividing into, can you see this upper and lower part? This bada wala part here, this is your arteriole. This entire part, what is it? Arteriole. See beta, this is your artery. If you can see this arrow passing on, everybody can see the single artery?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
This artery is dividing into, see this, I have made an arteriole. Upper margin of arteriole and lower margin of arteriole. Can you see this entire space is arteriole? So if you see in arteriole, the lumen is more or it is less? The space that you're finding,
More.
it is more. Now see the small divisions which I made in the center. Ye chota chota. These are capillaries. Compare the lumen of capillaries and the lumen of arterioles. Lumen of arterioles is more or capillaries is more?
Arterioles.
Arterioles. So what will happen? The pressure here, the pressure will be increasing or will it decrease because it is entering from wider to lower, narrower passage. So just now we discussed what will happen to the pressure.
Increase.
Yes, it will increase. And we
Ma'am?
also know, yes, beta,
Ma'am, what are arterioles?
beta, arteries, you know, na, they divide further into, arteries further divide into what, children?
Capillaries.
Arterioles and capillaries.
Arterioles.
Arterioles.
Where, in which system did we study about these arteries, arteriole? Which system was it?
Blood
Circulatory system. Circulatory system.
In circulatory system. Which were the bigger units, beta?
arteries.
Arteries.
You've heard about arteries?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Arteries further divide to?
Arterioles and capillaries.
Arterioles.
Beta, the smallest blood vessels are capillaries only. Remember that the smallest blood vessels are what? They are capillaries only. And then artery is the main unit which further divides. Which further divides into smaller units. What are these smaller units known as?
Arterioles.
And then the smallest unit is?
Capillaries.
I did not draw that. I thought it would be a bit clear for you. But anyways, let us discuss it with the help of the diagram only. Let me try to explain this to you. If it's a little confusion in the junior classes, if not done. Circulatory system, if you have done beta, you've got blood vessels. You know about the pulmonary circuit, pulmonary tract, basically the layers and the chambers. How many of you are
Yes.
not clear about this arteriole wala thing? Only one child or others also have a problem? Let me explain roughly to you, beta. Artery is a main bada wala tube. Then artery divides into smaller parts which are known as arterioles. And then in arterioles, we've got these small, thin uh, kind of vessels which are known as capillaries. I think for here it should be enough for you. यहाँ से देख के समझने की कोशिश करो बेटा. Whoever asked this question, see this is your artery. Can you see the single unit over here? Here there are no divisions. This is a single unit. I have labeled this is my artery. Now these bigger ones, this boundary which I'm showing, these are the arterioles. Arteries further dividing to form arterioles. And then these smaller units are the smallest units that we have in your blood circulatory system. If you understand like this, they are the capillaries. We were talking that blood came from a wider region to a narrow region. So the pressure of the blood has increased. See how two things are going to support the filtration of blood. Number one, the pressure of blood has increased. And number two, I just told you something about the walls of the capillaries. What did I tell you, children?
These are very thin.
How many layers they have?
One.
Single layered.
So will it be easier for things to flow out? Will it support? If something has to go out, will this system support or not?
It will find
Beta,
difficulty.
if
It
there are
will
many
support.
layers, it is going to support, because here you just have a single layer, and that too the layer is very thin. So there are two things which are going to support. One is the high pressure of the blood, and second is that this part, we are talking about the wall of the capillary, it is very thin. So what will happen? Some blood will get filtered off. Some blood will come out from the capillaries. Okay. This part which is getting filtered out is what we call as the lymph. The part which will get filtered out of these capillaries, beta. Some blood is going to get filtered out from here. This is what we call as lymph. Something gets filtered out from the blood. Whatever is getting filtered out is called lymph. Now let us find out what all is filtered out. Remember, two things are filtered out: plasma and lymphocytes. What are the two things which are filtered out?
Plasma and
Plasma and
Plasma and
lymphocytes.
lymphocytes.
Remember, no RBC filters out, no platelets filter out. It is only plasma and lymphocytes. No RBC will filter out, no platelets will filter out. Only what is filtering out is plasma plus lymphocytes. And I told you कि जो filter होके बाहर आएगा, that is lymph. That means lymph will have RBCs or not?
No, ma'am.
No,
No.
ma'am.
Okay. Because RBC filter nahi ho rahe, they're not coming out. What about platelets? Will plasma contain platelets?
No.
It will not contain. Even the bigger proteins, beta, they will not be filtered out. So will the larger proteins be present in the plasma? Sorry, in the lymph?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Larger proteins? No, because larger proteins are not able to filter out. So what is plasma? What is this lymph? See, blood minus plasma proteins. Okay, see, this is a simple way to remember the composition of lymph. Blood minus some large plasma proteins would have been better, minus RBC, minus most of the WBCs except one type of WBC, and that is lymphocytes. Only which WBCs will be filtered out?
Lymphocytes.
Lymphocytes.
Only one type of WBC and minus platelets. सब कुछ minus कर दो, कुछ भी नहीं आएगा बाहर. Larger plasma proteins will not be filtered, RBC will not be filtered, almost all WBCs except one will not be filtered, and even platelets will not be filtered. That means only two things are filtering out. One is plasma, and second is one type of WBCs, and that is which type of WBCs?
Lymphocytes.
Lymphocytes.
So when I talk about composition of lymph, it is blood minus large proteins, minus RBCs, minus WBCs except one, and minus platelets. Now let me go back to the figure again. See, from the capillaries, something is being filtered out. When your blood has reached the capillaries and the pressure of the blood has increased, another supporting system that they are getting is the wall of the capillary is also very thin. So something can easily ooze out, something can easily come out of the capillaries. तो वो जो something बाहर आएगा from the wall of the capillary, that something is what we call as lymph. And what is that something which will come out? What are the two things I told you? Only two things are going to come out. What are the two things?
Plasma and lymphocytes.
Plasma and lymphocytes.
RBCs नहीं आएंगे, platelets नहीं आएंगे, large proteins नहीं आएंगे. So what will be the composition of plasma? Blood minus some plasma proteins, minus RBCs, minus most of the WBCs, and minus the platelets. Whenever we are talking about lymph, remember, large proteins nahi present hai beta, RBCs bhi nahi hai, most of the WBCs are also not present, only platelets are also not present. So basically the blood which is coming out from the capillaries is having only two things. What are the two things?
Plasma and
Plasma and
lymphocytes.
lymphocytes.
Lymphocytes. So this is the main composition of plasma, and these are the things which plasma does not contain. If you see, when it will ooze out, ये figure देखते हैं फिर से. When from here, because of high pressure, capillary wall से बेटा ये filter होके बाहर आएगा और it will ooze out because of high pressure, it will fall on the cells of this tissue. जो भी adjacent tissue है, it will fall on the cells of this tissue. See if you here. These are the tissue cells, these dot, 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 we are trying to show that it has come and it has fallen on the tissue. Now, because it will be formed here, it will come here. That is why it is also known as tissue fluid. Sometimes, what do we call them? We call them as tissue fluid because capillaries are present in which region? Tissue region. Where are capillaries present in the human body? In the tissue region. And कैपिलरी से ही फ्लूइड बाहर निकल रहा है, कैपिलरी से ही लिम्फ बाहर आ रहा है. एंड कैपिलरीज कहाँ प्रेजेंट है? कैपिलरीज टिश्यू रीजन में प्रेजेंट है. दैट इज व्हाई दिस लिक्विड इज आल्सो नोन एज टिश्यू फ्लूइड. व्हाट इज द अदर नेम ऑफ लिम्फ?
Tissue fluid.
Tissue fluid. Why do we call it tissue fluid? Because it oozes out of the capillaries and capillaries are present in the tissue region. Now let me give you a simple idea. I'm just trying to explain something. Please remember I put a box over here. This is suppose. This is not the exact figure, beta. ये सिर्फ आपको एक थोड़ा सा idea लग जाए. That is why I've given this example to you. So please don't learn this mathematical figure as such. This is not the exact figure. Suppose 10 millimeter of lymph is formed at one blood circulation, supposing at one time, out of the entire blood which was flowing, how much of lymph is filtered out? The example which I'm giving?
10 millimeter.
10 millimeters. So, beta lymph क्या है तो basically blood ही ना, some part of blood जो बाहर filter होके आ गया, isn't it? Do you agree with this part?
Yes, ma'am.
So the amount of the blood which is flowing in the main capillaries, will it remain the same or will it decrease?
It will decrease.
Decrease.
Every time the blood is flowing in the capillaries, in every circulation, थोड़ा 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 हमेशा filter होता जा रहा है, lymph के form में it's coming out. I've given you a rough example कि every time in one circulation, how much lymph is being formed? 10 millimeters. Approximately how much volume is there of blood in a human being? Normal average volume कितना blood होता है in human beings? Any idea?
6 to 7 liters.
हाँ. When we take an average, we take it approximately 5 liters. Okay. So सोचो बेटा, if in your body there is 5 liters of blood and every time उस 5 liters से 10 millimeters कम होता जाएगा, then don't you think a time will come जब सारा blood खत्म हो जाएगा? Because lymph is what? Lymph is some part of blood filtered out. ये और बात है that RBCs are not coming, platelets are not coming, but बेटा है तो blood ही which is coming out. So out of that entire blood, if 10 millimeters oozes out every time, don't you think the blood volume is going to decrease down?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it will decrease down. Then how do we survive? ऐसे तो हम सबका अब तक blood finish हो जाना चाहिए. We had only 5 to 6 liters of blood. And every time 10 millimeters, चलो मान लीजिए 10 millimeters नहीं, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. But don't you think the time will come when entire blood will finish? Then why
Yes,
doesn't it
ma'am.
finish? Then why doesn't it finish? Anyone? Have you ever thought of this? Why the blood doesn't finish? No.
Ma'am, because RBCs are formed.
RBCs must be formed, but RBCs to वैसे भी बेटा they are not decreasing because RBCs are not coming out in the lymph. So that is not going to balance our loss at all. Because did RBCs come out, children?
No, ma'am.
No,
No,
ma'am.
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 Plasma, it is basically blood which is coming out. Only plasma with
Lymphocytes.
Lymphocytes.
even if it
Lymphocytes.
is plasma with lymphocytes, it is actually blood only. No? I told you when I said composition of lymph, I said blood without RBCs, blood without platelets. मतलब है तो blood ही. So the blood is decreasing. If blood is decreasing, तो blood finish हो जाना चाहिए. But ऐसा नहीं होता है. Why this does not happen? Let's study this. The volume will decrease, so it has to be sent back to the blood circulation. So the lymph which is coming out has to be sent back to the blood circulation. And who is going to do this? Whose job is this? Lymphatic vessels. Clear, beta? The lymph which has come out, वो कहाँ जाएगा? It is not going to be wasted. It will again go back to your blood circulation system. And who is going to take this lymph back to the blood circulation system?
Lymphatic
Lymphatic vessel.
The lymphatic vessels. Okay, before I explain the lymphatic vessels to you, very quickly, let's do this part. I am not in a hurry at all. What are the three main components of lymphatic system, children, quickly?
Lymph vessels.
capillaries.
Yes, the fluid which is circulating in the body, what is that called?
Lymph.
Lymph.
And the vessels through which it circulates are known as?
Lymph vessels.
Lymphatic vessels.
I told you about two types of lymphatic vessels. What are they?
Lymphatic capillaries
Lymphatic
and
Capillaries
lymphatic
and
capillaries and
ducts.
ducts.
lymphatic ducts.
Now, when we did, I said many lymphatic capillaries will join to form bigger vessels, which are known as lymphatic ducts. And then we talked about the glands which are present. What were they known as? Lymph what?
Lymph
Nodes.
nodes.
Lymph nodes.
Lymph is formed by the filtration of blood. We know that arteries divide to form arterioles. Arterioles further branch to capillaries. How are the walls of the capillaries, beta?
Thin, very thin. Thin.
Very
Very.
thin.
So pressure is more. Filtration of blood will take place. The walls of the capillary are so thin that they are made up of a single layer of squamous epithelium. So blood will first enter the arteriole. Arteriole में lumen कैसा था बच्चे? Cavity space ज़्यादा है या कम है?
ज़्यादा है.
Zyada.
Arteriole में space ज़्यादा है. You can simply imagine assembly time पे. The best example is when we have assembly in our school. You easily stand in the area जहाँ पे assembly होता है. But when you enter into the corridors to go up to your classes, don't you feel there's a lot of pushing? Pushing takes
Yes,
place.
ma'am.
If there is no teacher, of course, I'm talking about if there is nobody to watch you. That pushing, falling, does it take place or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Because the number of students were the same during the assembly, but the space was more. When the same number of students enter the corridor where the space is less, obviously the pressure is more. There is more of pushing. There is more of you don't even have to move at times. The piche wala person pushes you and you reach 2 steps ahead. So this is exactly what is happening. Arteriole is the assembly area. यहाँ पे बहुत सारा space है, broader space है बेटा. From arteriole we are entering capillaries. Capillaries are narrow or wide?
No, ma'am. Narrow.
Narrow.
Narrow. So beta
मैम
blood is
आपने
flowing
बताया
from
था कि
wider.
वर्क करवाएं आपने करवा दिए
Beta
चैप्टर्स आपने वो
somebody
बताया
speaking. Somebody speaking to me. No. Anyways, blood is flowing from wider to narrow or narrow to wider? Jaldi,
Wider
jaldi.
to
Wider to narrow.
Wider to narrow.
Pressure will increase or decrease?
Increase.
Increase.
इसको roughly समझते हैं. This vessel, this single vessel is your artery. Artery further divides to form arterioles. Arterioles के अंदर ये capillaries है. Capillaries की walls बहुत thin है. So narrow lumen में आती pressure भी बढ़ गया, walls भी thin है. So some blood gets oozed out. Some blood will come out. That which comes out is what we call as lymph. So when I say what is lymph, it is plasma plus lymphocytes. That means plasma is what? Minus big plasma proteins. I forgot to write big over here. ये आप कर लीजिएगा when you write your notes. Blood minus some big plasma proteins, minus RBCs, minus most of the WBCs except one type of WBC. Only one type of WBC oozes out. What is it?
lymphocytes.
Lymphocytes.
So what are the three things which are missing in lymph, which is present in the blood but not in lymph?
RBC platelets.
RBCs,
Plasma
platelets,
protein,
and
WBC.
most of WBCs.
Yes, very good. So blood will have all these things, lymph will not have. So when we are doing the differences, we can take this also. So this is your composition of lymph. And because lymph is made by capillaries, it comes out from capillaries and capillaries are present in tissue region. That is why lymph is also known as, what is the other name, children?
Tissue fluid.
Tissue fluid.
And if every time little lymph gets filtered out, the volume of the blood is going to decrease. So the lymph is sent back to the blood circulatory system by whom? Who is going to do this work?
Lymphatic vessels.
Lymphatic vessels.
We have already we have discussed this earlier that there are two types of lymphatic vessels. What are the two types I told you in the beginning when I started?
capillaries.
Lymphatic capillaries and lymphatic duct.
Okay, let us study about lymphatic capillaries. What are lymphatic capillaries? They are very similar to the capillaries of blood vessels. Okay, the only difference is that they carry lymph. Blood capillaries, they carry what? Blood. And lymph capillaries will carry what, beta?
Lymph.
Lymph. Remember, there are two main features of lymph capillaries. They are very narrow and they're lined by a single layer of endothelium. Only one layer. We have already done this earlier also. Squamous epithelium layer, that is a single layer it is there. So what are the two characteristic features of capillaries? They are very narrow and they're lined by only one membrane. This I want to tell you about. I think there is only one word in this all-in-one book of yours, lacteal. I'll tell you a little bit about this lymphatic. See, all these lymph capillaries are of the same type. सब narrow होती है, सब में एक ही membrane होता है. But there is one special type of lymph capillary. Its name is lacteal. Please name the special type of lymph capillary.
Lacteal.
Lactale.
If you will open your book, you will find this word at one place, lacteal. So lacteal is what? Is it a capillary or is it a duct?
Capillary.
Yes.
Capillary.
Capillary.
Capillary. Now let me tell you why this is a special type of lymph capillary. पहले तो इसका location समझो बेटा. This lacteal collects the lymph from the villi of the intestines. Obviously, capillaries are collecting lymph. This specific वाला capillary जिसका नाम lacteal रखा है, I'll tell you क्यों lacteal बोलते हैं इसको. I'll be discussing it with you. This is going to collect lymph from which area? The villi of the intestine. If you see, I've drawn this vial. See, these are what? You know what are villi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So these are drawn villi. Villi are found in which organ?
Intestine.
Intestine. Small
So these,
intestine.
if I have written in the side, these are the villi of the intestines. These smaller projections are called microvilli. इसके बीच में देखो, villi के बीच में, you can see this capillary. This is called lacteal. What is it called? Lacteal.
Lacteal.
Because it appears milky. If you will see, its color is milky. That is why we call it as lacteal. Lactose, lacta is all related to what? It's related to milk. So when the appearance is somewhat lactobacillus, lactose, you heard about so many milk related words which start from lact. So what are we calling it as? What is this capillary called? Lactate. It is called lacteal because it appears milky. And why does it appear milky? Because of the presence of fats in it. What is inside this, Vita? Basically, what will be present inside this capillary?
Lacteal.
Fats. Intestine mein, you know, absorption of food takes place. You know, this is the important part of digestion which takes place in the intestine, that is absorption of food. When I say absorption of food, many things are absorbed. So the fats which are absorbed here, fats which are absorbed in the intestine, uska transport ka jo kaam hota hai, that is done by this capillary, that is lacteal. So what is the function of lacteal? It helps in the transport of the fats which are absorbed in the intestine. That is why यहाँ पे fats deposit हो जाते हैं अंदर. And because of fat deposition, it appears milky. And that is the reason we call it as what? We call it as lacteal. What is this capillary called?
Lacteal.
Lacteal. Again, this part, from competition point of view, it is needed, not from 11th class. Okay, these absorbed fats which are present in the lacteal are known as chylomicrons. ये जो fat इसके अंदर है, because of which ये milky लगता है देखने में, this capillary, these absorbed fats are known as, these particles of fats, beta, big globules of fats, they are known as chylomicrons. What do you call them as?
Chylomicrons.
If you want, you learn. If you don't want, don't learn. I just keep telling whatever you feel. This is not a part of the syllabus. It's okay. Chali. What are these? What are these projections?
Villi.
Yes.
Villi.
And this is a special capillary. What is the name of this capillary?
Lacteal.
Lacteal.
Lacteal. Why is it called lacteal?
Because it appears milky
Milky.
due to
And
the
it appears
presence
milky. Yes, because of the presence of
of fats.
fats. What is its function? What is the function of lacteal?
Transport of absorbed fat from intestine.
Transport of absorbed fat. So these fat globules present in the lacteal, because of which this capillary appears milky, they are known as what?
Chylomicrons.
Chylomicrons. So we were talking about capillary. We said सारी capillaries एक जैसी होती हैं. They are all narrow and they're lined by a single endothelium. Only one capillary is called a special capillary क्योंकि वो दिखने में थोड़ा अलग है. And what is that थोड़ा अलग? That it is milky. And where is this lacteal capillary found? It is found in the villi of the intestine. Let us move on to the next part now. Lymphatic ducts. From all the places, capillaries will collect the lymph. What was the function of capillaries? See, capillaries are having what? They have a lot of lymph. They will join to form bigger vessels and form ducts. When I started in the beginning only, I told you, beta, dekhiye, that small vessels, they join. See, lymphatic capillaries, they join to form. Can you see this arrow? They join to form what? This arrow shows you that what do they form?
Lymphatic duct.
Lymphatic ducts. Now we are going to study about the lymphatic ducts. All the capillaries have combined and they have formed ducts. There are two types of ducts. Okay, how many ducts are there? Two ducts. One is called as the right duct and the second is the left duct. Beta, this I've written wrong. This should be RD. Okay, when you write, correct it. There are two types of lymphatic ducts. The duct which is present in the right is called as the right duct, and the one which is present in the left is going to call as the left duct. I've written left duct for both of them. Let's come to the right duct. This collects all the lymph collected by the capillaries from the right side of the body. Where is it going to? This right duct is going to collect all the lymph which is coming from which part of your body?
Right side
Right
of the
side.
body.
See, right part of the heart, right part of the brain, right legs, right arm, right legs, everything. All the capillaries on the right side, they will collect all lymph, and this entire lymph will go to which duct? The right duct or the left duct?
Right.
Right duct. Similarly, all the capillaries on the left side of the body will collect all the things, and they will go from all, and they will give it to which duct? Or the right?
Duct.
Yes. The left duct is also called as the thoracic duct. Remember this. The left duct is also known as which duct?
Thoracic duct.
It is known as the thoracic duct. Okay, let me take this part again with you. Many capillaries join to form what?
Lymphatic duct.
Lymphatic ducts.
Okay, lymphatic ducts. After this, I'll be taking up very quickly. Once I revise this, I'll be taking up the differences between blood and lymph. And I would want you to tell me the differences rather than me telling you. Before that, let me do this very quickly, children. Once it is not in detail in your syllabus much, so don't worry. What are the three main components of lymphatic system?
Lymph, lymph
Lymph
vessel, and
vessels and lymph ducts.
Vessels.
Okay. The
And
fluid
lymph
which
nodes.
how many fluids circulate in the human body?
lymph.
Two fluids. One is
Lymph.
blood and the other is
Lymph.
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 The vessels through which lymph circulates are known as?
Lymph
Vessels.
vessels.
Okay. How many kinds of lymph vessels are there?
Two.
Two.
The smaller vessels, they are called capillaries, and these smaller capillaries join to form a bigger vessel. What is that bigger vessel called as?
Lymphatic duct.
ducts.
Yes. On the way, there are certain glands present. What are they known as?
Lymph nodes.
Lymph nodes.
Lymph nodes. Now we're going to talk about the composition of lymph. Okay? Tell me, lymph is formed by the filtration of what?
Blood.
Blood.
What are the two conditions which suit the lymph to be filtered out? What are the two things which are suitable?
Trans.
Tell me, ऐसा क्यों होता है that lymph was flowing very smoothly and then all of a sudden it started oozing out?
Ma'am, because it goes from wider region to narrower region.
Very good. First point we've already got that it goes from a wider region to a narrower region. And what is the second reason? Second thing?
It is very thin and it oozes out.
Exactly. The walls of the capillary are very, very thin. Let us elaborate the first point which she said. It goes from wider to narrow.